Okay, folks, thank you all for being a little patient with us. Today's compressed schedule kind of got us behind a few minutes. I'd like to get our Governmental Affairs meeting started this afternoon, and to begin with, I'd like to ask for Chairman LaHood if he would take us to the Lord in prayer, please.
Certainly. Bow with me, please. Thank you, God, for this day. Thank you for all that are here to just be involved in the decisions being made, the public policy being considered. Just pray that you give us wisdom up here to make the right decisions and honor you as we do it. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Okay, we're going to make some slight adjustment to the order that on the agenda right now. Got some people that will be presenting in a little bit. They're tied up in other committees at the moment, so we're going to go ahead and I'd like to start out, if I could, ask Representative Mary Margaret Oliver, would you mind presenting to us 399? And you're welcome to present from your chair, sis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all your help and opportunity to give us an opportunity as a full committee to discuss a number of different bills that deal with what I think all of us recognize as a significant change in relation to purchase of single-family homes. We're hearing very significant statistics that are concerning to me in relation to institutional hedge fund, out-of-state Georgia investment purchase of significant percentages of single-family homes, particularly in the metropolitan Atlanta area, the big metropolitan Atlanta area that is being targeted nationally. I think we're in the top 5 of areas, metropolitan areas in the country that are being targeted by this institutional investment opportunity that has presented itself to out-of-state, out-of-country, international monies groups. We had testimony yesterday, and I'm sure the committee members remember it, about the statistics of institutional purchase of single-family homes. In my personal district, House District 84 in DeKalb County, 42% of the homes are institutionally owned at this point. I'm 24th in the state in terms of percentage of homes institutionally owned, and that has brought me to, with others, a real examination of this issue, the way it changes the economy, the way it changes the opportunities for families to own homes, and the way it's going to escalate prices. House Bill 399 is a simple requirement that any landlord who operates more than 25 homes, and I'm looking at LC 473483S right now, shall employ a licensed broker under the Real Estate License Code, Chapter 4043, who may or may not reside in the state, and at least one person be located within the state who shall be responsible for receiving, coordinating, managing, and responding to communications from tenants of such landlord related to maintenance and other issues. We have a situation, and demonstrated by this tragic story of the 3 children who died in a fire last week, of out-of-state management companies with no one in Georgia who have the responsibility for dealing with complaints by tenants in single-family homes. We know that there's a possibility when homes are not attended to, not cared for in a responsible way, that those homes are going to lose value, and that is going to create problems around the community. I think everyone I talk to recognizes this an issue in the district, and I think House Bill 399, the substitute, which accepts the suggestion made yesterday by the real estate brokers, is very happy to accommodate their suggestion. And also, Attorney General Sam Owens has spoken with me about a request he had on behalf of one of his clients at Denton's, and we've incorporated both of those suggestions into the substitute I bring before the committee at this time and ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you, Representative Oliver, and I don't have any lights on the board, but I did just want to ask a clarifying question. The revision, the substitute that we have in front of us takes into account the testimony we heard yesterday, which basically says that there is already a property management provision within existing real estate law that would cover part of what was desired to do with 399. Is that not true?
Yes, sir. And the suggestion that the real estate brokers are making that I'm happy to accept gives an additional enforcement opportunity for a profession that we respect. And they now may provide this service, and this gives them an opportunity to participate more formally in a shall responsibility.
Okay, thank you. We do have a couple of questions here. First of all, Representative Alallier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, thank you for bringing us the bill. I just appreciate the transparency that this bill provides, a level of ownership and boots on the ground for renters to have a direct line to an individual, not a company, not a shadow LLC, but a living, breathing person who can address the concerns that they have. And so appreciate what this does to families, particularly those families with children living in difficult dwellings. And Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, would love to put a motion.
Okay, we'll hold on that motion for just a moment. We do have, like to recognize Representative Adesanya.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Rep. Oliver. This is a good bill, and I think it's necessary. We need that. I was wondering, would landlords meet the requirement if they use local property management firms? Would they meet
Yes.
the requirement of?
Yes, I believe that would be so. There's going to be a property management firm is going to have an individual in Georgia. That's the option that they can choose a broker, they can choose, but they have to have a person in Georgia.
In Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And seeing no other questions, and one thing I did not mention at the beginning of the meeting, any of these bills that we have heard in subcommittee and had public comment, unless there is significant substantive changes, we're not going to have additional public comment today. Okay, there are a few bills we're going to be considering today that we have not had any public comment on, so this will be the first hearing, and we will try to act on those if appropriate also. So this one was heard yesterday in a full committee meeting in a hearing only status. So at this point, I would entertain a motion.
Move to pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the passage of 399, and that is LC, hold on, 473483S, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next we'll move on to House Bill 244. Mr. Chaz Cannon, if you'd like to, Representative Cannon, if you'll come to the table and present your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have House Bill 244 LC 473465S, substitute. House Bill 244 provides some additional flexibility in local government audit requirements based on the level of local government expenditures. The bill eases, this is key to the bill, the bill eases and reduces the financial reporting burden for those cities and counties who have expenditures less than $2.5 million. The need for this bill came out of some of the recommendations from the Rural Development Council in 2023, which specifically directed the Department of Audits and Accounts to come up with a reasonable way of reducing some of the accounting and auditing burden on smaller local governments by the 2025 legislative session. Just a little bit of stats and key figures here. There are over 120 cities that are delinquent in their annual audit filings. This represents about 23% of the total number of cities that are ineligible for state grant funds. 54 cities have 2 or more reports in arrears, with 34 cities having 3 or more reports in arrears. Also, there are over 19 counties that are delinquent in their annual audit filings, which represent about 12% of counties. Therefore, those 12% of counties are ineligible for state grant funds. 2 counties have 2 reports in arrears. And if you know anything about local government, when you are delinquent, those local governments are then unable to access state funds, which are really critical for them and vital for the citizens, namely LMIG, LRA, CDBG. They become ineligible for those state grants. And the proposed language expands the use of AUP, agreed upon procedures, engagements, and creates a simpler reporting option as opposed to financial statements being prepared and audited on full generally accepted accounting principles basis, which are GAAP. Specifically, the bill allows for 2 less costly options for it or towards a full GAAP from both the preparer side, the auditing side, and also the auditor expense. It also incorporates some language to address late filings of local governments, primarily counties in this regard, that may be attributable to constitutional officers. Most times your sheriff, clerk of the court, probate are using different accounting systems that are different from the actual county, and sometimes those have to marry up, and that can create a delay sometimes, which creates a backlog in the county submitting its audit to the state in time to be eligible for these state grants. So we worked very closely with GMA, ACCG, the state auditor, and I want to appreciate Letch Council for their diligent work in crafting this language. It was very helpful cooperation. So just to kind of reiterate, the legislation seeks to allow some simplicity in the reporting requirements for what are often very small, very rural local governments that do not have a high level of government expenditures. And if you allow me just a little bit of time, Mr. Chairman, I've asked the state auditor to briefly go through some of the technical changes that are in the bill.
Yes, sir.
Turn them over to Mr. Griffin, please.
All right, Mr. Griffin, if you'll just identify yourself and proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Greg Griffin, I'm the state auditor. And I will just, as stated, I will quickly go through some of the more significant line item changes. So changes to lines 18 through 21. That's where we are increasing the expenditure threshold for full GAAP accounting and auditing from $550,000 to $2.5 million or more. That section is also, we are removing from existing statute the threshold criteria, or removing the population threshold criteria that were in 18, lines 18 and 19. In lines 25 through 31, that's where we are creating this optional special purpose framework. This is the alternative accounting and auditing framework to the full GAAP basis. It is anticipated that we will specify and prescribe how that's going to work, and we would plan to have the basis on a cash basis of accounting instead of full accrual accounting. Changes to lines 32 and 33 increase the expenditure threshold for use of the AUP, or the agreed upon procedures engagements, from $550,000 to $1 million. That again increases the potential number of potential cities that can avail themselves of the AUP, which is the least costly approach to satisfying the audit requirements in the statute. Changes to lines 41 through 46 limit the use of an AUP engagement to 4 consecutive years and requires a full audit every 5th year. So there's an element of accountability there with that requirement. Lines 59 and 62 allow the state auditor to grant exceptions to expenditure thresholds. So if entities are close to those various thresholds, we don't want them jumping back and forth between an AUP engagement and a full audit. Moving from AUP to a full audit is very costly and expensive. Auditors would have to put opinions on opening balances, and so we want to avoid that if an exception can be made for good cause. Changes to lines 83 and 85 allow the state audit to accept reports that contain an adverse opinion only for purposes that relate to the special purpose framework. Changes to lines 141 through 173 is the language that incentivizes the constitutional officers to turn in their financial information timely. Lines 150 to 155 allow counties an extra 90 days extension if they can't meet the statutory due dates that are attributable to constitutional officers, those constitutional officers. And I believe those are the significant changes. Again, the goal here is to increase compliance and while retaining some element of accountability. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Griffin. We've got a couple of lights flashing here. They may be for the sponsor. So we'll start with Representative Adesanya.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Cannon. I think it's a good idea to provide flexibility for local government to give them more time to complete their audits. Just something to think about. Have you considered some cities or municipality taking advantage of that and delaying their audits?
Yeah, sure, that happens now, but I think what we've come up with here really kind of adds some more accountability, and if Greg can chime in on this, but I think there is a level of accountability. The key thing is not to let those cities miss out on the funds that are coming down from the state. For instance, these LMIG allocations can be in the millions of dollars. CDBG can be $1 million. LRA funds can be $1 million. So these cities that need this money are losing out on these grants, and it's really setting them back further than they need to be. So this is just a tool to, in a single audit, could be up to $8,000. That's an expensive bill to pay for a city's general fund that's got $40,000 in the general fund line. It's just an expensive proposition for them to do that. And it's the auditing firms that do this kind of work are few and far between. In some cases, there's not an auditing firm in the region where these cities are located. So the staffing requirements for the city or the county to find these folks and to do an RFP for an audit, it's really difficult for them to do. But at the same time, they need to be accountable to the taxpayer and to their citizens for spending this money. That's why we've lowered this threshold a little bit to allow them the flexibility, but still have them do a full gap audit once every 5 years. So there is that kind of carrot stick analogy involved.
And just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
What's holding them up besides what you mentioned now? What have you heard from the cities? What's holding them up getting their audits completed in time to get these grants and funds?
I probably just knowledge of the software. You've got folks that are using QuickBooks. Their software is outdated. There could be a myriad of reasons. The staffing might not be able to attract the CFO. Our county is fairly large, and we submitted a request for a CPA and to work on staff, and at a pay scale that we thought was appropriate, and we couldn't find anybody in that pay scale. So I can imagine if you're a much smaller county trying to find a financial auditor or a financial person on staff, it's fairly difficult. And if you don't have that personal staff doing your bank statements and reconciliations, you're going to be behind quickly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing the bill. What is the longest period of time for a city or a county that have not completed their audits?
Mr. Auditor, I think 4 consecutive years, I think, is the limit for a full gap audit, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
I was asking, what is the longest period of time that that they have not, that some of these cities or counties have not completed their audit?
So it varies. We've got from 1 day to 240 days being late. And there are available to the cities, and if they request it and it's eligible, they can request a 180-day extension. So fiscal year end, they have 180 days to turn in their audits. If they are eligible for an extension, they can add another 180 days to before they have to turn in their audit. So it's really a year after their fiscal year end is when we could possibly receive an audit report for a city, which is an awful long time after year end.
I have two more questions. One, the state doesn't have any services. So, for example, if you see a city or county and they keep running into the same problems, there's no auditor or someone that we can send to that city to do the audit, and then they just have to pay you back for it out of their grant money?
We do not currently have a SWAT team, if you will, that can go out and do that. Some states, they do have those situations, but we don't here in the state.
And that was a couple years ago, I think Chairwoman Smith had a bill where you were combining cities and counties or something like that. Do y'all remember that bill that she had? And so that way they would share services. So, okay, thank you.
The incentive for them to do these audits and be up to date on their financial reporting is in the grant money that comes down. There's this thing called Plan First that DCA administers. You're eligible for, I think it's $750 or $1 million, per year, but you can't get that unless you're up to date on your audits. So that's kind of the incentive to get these cities up to speed and counties up to speed so that they are eligible for this money. I mean, LMIG, you can pair that with T-SPLOST or with your SPLOST to fix road projects, but you miss out on that $1 million if you don't have your audits up to date. So that's the intent.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Cannon. At this point, we have no other lights blinking. We did have a couple of people sign up to speak. We have had some testimony on this in subcommittee prior. However, both organizations signed up to speak are for the bill. That was ACCG and GMA. So I'm getting a thumbs up back here from both of them. So we will let the record reflect that. And at this point, I would entertain a motion on the part of the committee. Got a move to pass. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, the ayes have it. Bill passes. Ready to go on the rules. Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman.
Okay, next we're going to jump around just a little bit again. Let me find my number right here. I'd like to ask Chairman Powell if he'd like to present House Bill 467. This is one we have heard in subcommittee. And you're welcome to do it from your seat, sir, or go to the table, either one. Yes, sir. Thank you. Go ahead at your convenience, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I bring to you today substitute House Bill 467. What you have in front of you should be LC 280679S. It was heard in the subcommittee the other day, and it's moved on to this committee. This is called the Monument Protection Act, and I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't give the committee a little bit of background to this. You know, we've had a lot of acrimony in this state and across this nation about monuments in recent years. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when we did the Georgia flag change, the legislature did, there was a tremendous amount of anxiety amongst some quarters of the state. Since then, there's been a lot more acrimony. Then a few years ago, myself and one of the senators, we made an attempt to upgrade the Monument Protection Act, not just for the protection of the monuments, but also to try to give a pathway so that in communities that they wanted to move monuments for growth or whatever, that they could do it. But I'll be quite frank with you, it's been a very dismal process. The laws that are in effect have been not exactly cohesive, if I may use that word. And there's been no modification of any of this, and this is what we're attempting to do. And that's to get rid of the oddities in the law and to give a clear-cut path to local officials when and if that issue comes up about the movement of monuments. In this bill, what we're doing is this clarifies that the violations aren't just entities, but they're actual people that are doing that, and that's for legalese terms. Privately owned monuments are identified. The question came up in the subcommittee, what does that mean? That means a lot of the monuments that you see that's been on grounds for 150 years came from groups like the UDC and people like that that were given permission to locate their monuments on these grounds. The definition of a claimant was clarified. That would be anybody that has an interest, a specific interest. That would be like a group, a historical group, or any type of group that might be interested in this. Injunctions are permitted, so that would avoid the unnecessary expenses of litigation. Authority has been given to the state attorney general or the district attorneys if they choose, not mandatory, but if they choose to represent anyone in one of these cases. The claimants are clearly identified as these individuals, and it shows because there was a judge's ruling said, well, no, they didn't receive an injury. This clearly decides that they don't have to have a physical injury. Now, the real guts to this, to the benefit of the local governments, is it gives them a pathway. If they decide that they have a monument that wants to be relocated, they want to take it down for whatever and various sundry reasons, then they can take out an ad in the legal organ. Now, in the subcommittee, the question came up from one of the distinguished members that legal ads, a lot of people don't even know what a legal ad is, but that's still recognized in state law as whoever the legal organ of the county is. And I would certainly be willing to accept the county website, city or county website or whatever is the will of the committee. But they put an ad in there about giving the monument to an interested party. And an interested party could be a number of things. It could be a historical group, it could be, a religious group. I mean, anybody that has an interest in that monument. And then that governing authority could offer it up. They could move that monument to whatever the location. Even they've got to give priority to the county in which it comes, and if nobody in that county wants it, then it could be offered up to someone in a different county or whatever. And then it could be moved to them, and then they could reestablish that monument. If there's a litigation is filed in between of all of this, then that 90-day is told at that point. Then it goes into the courts, and the courts makes their rulings, and then it get picked back up again after that toll is expired. And that, quite frankly, is what this does. It gives more clarity to the process of how to deal with monuments to protect those monuments. I would tell you that it's my experience that in this day and time we live in, I have concerns because the monuments that you may not like today for historical purposes may be the very ones that will be popular the next decade. The ones that are popular this decade, they may be the ones that are subject to be moved by various and sundry groups. There was a question that was asked to me, and I actually had to think about it after the meeting the other day. But one of the members asked a question, was there anything in this bill that violated his First Amendment right to protest? And I thought to myself, what's that got to do with this? Because this has nothing to do with protest, except for the fact that they want to protest to keep things stirred up. In this life that we're living today, people can always find a reason that they don't like something. But I can assure you that at some point, those other monuments will be subject to target as well. What this does is this gives local governments a more clear path about how to deal with it, to how to relocate it, offer them up for movement. Be glad to stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions. Representative Adesanya.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Paul. I like the idea of protecting monuments and historical symbols. I wanted to know if a city, say for example, a Confederate monument within a jurisdiction that the city believes it's within theirs, if they relocate such monument, are they subject to the fines and the liabilities that you mentioned? Are cities subject to that?
If a city or a county wanted to move a monument with a 90-day notice, they could offer it up. If the group or individual files litigation, then it stops that, it tolls that 90-day process to see what is the ruling of the court. And then at that point, it can be furthered after that. Hopefully, this is an attempt to stop a lot of the litigation and to give a pathway, a little bit more settling to folks, for no better word, to move forward and try to take some of the animosity out of the air.
Thank you. And next, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you give me an example of a privately owned monument on
Public property.
state property? Agency or state property is what it is.
I can give you an example of private-owned monuments that were put up in most of the courthouse properties around the state of Georgia. A lot of those old Confederate monuments that you see were put up right after the Civil War, and it was from donations and subscriptions that were taken by the widows of those soldiers who died. And they were put up with the permission of the county. In some cases, the counties deeded them the foot or two of property. In other cases, it was perpetual that those monuments would stand.
So some, you're saying, are privately owned and on a private deed?
That would probably be the best way of explaining it.
Well, if you're saying a perpetual easement, that's different. But a separate deed, you would be saying you can't remove a privately owned monument from private property.
It could be removed. It's protecting those, but the jurisdiction, the governing authorities would still have the option to move those monuments or to give them away.
The ones on private property?
Yes. No, on public property. If it's on private property, those are protected by the private property owners. They're protected just like any other private property, and that's under the current statutes.
But let me make sure I'm understanding. So widows from years gone by were given permission to put a monument on public property. And that was granted by that local government at the time, correct? So now we're preempting local governments from doing what they want with their property, is what I'm hearing. Am I correct?
If it's on that public property, then they can offer that up to be moved, yes.
Got it.
Not destroyed, but to be moved.
But it was a pretty, elaborate
Yeah,
process that you described, which I thought we were trying to be less government, not more, but
I'm trying to give local officials an option
got it.
to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
What we've had several of these monuments in recent years that have been taken down, even when there was a court suit going on. A lot of them were took down, they were put into storage, and the counties are having to supply storage space for those. Probably never to be seen again, but they're still their responsibility to keep them intact and to keep them from being damaged. So this gives them an opportunity to clear their warehouse of these if they have them in storage.
But I thought you're precluding a county from even removing the monument at this point.
They've got to go through a process. It can go through due process, but they can offer it up first to give it to a third party.
Why can't they move it into storage and offer it the same way? And they can come take it out of storage.
If they move it into that storage, they do so after the judicial hearing has been held. We're trying to get the courts as much out of this as possible and get some more clear rendition of the rulings.
Okay, thank you. Next, Representative Montahan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did just want to ask, and this is my understanding of the bill, Mr. Chairman, and that is this is going to allow these folks to have just a lot more latitude to deal with these issues and these monuments on a local basis. I mean, it just seems like me that as a common sense, solution to a problem that, may cause a rift within the local community, or it could just be a way to honor those folks in the community that they want to honor and give them the latitude to treat it as they want to. Isn't that true?
That is, you're exactly right.
And to further, Mr. Chairman, I just think that we need to be a little bit more responsive to our local folks when they're dealing with these issues. And this, to be frank with you, has been one of the best solutions I've seen under the Gold Dome as it pertains to this issue. So thank you for bringing the bill, and I can't wait to support it.
Thank you. Representative Oliver.
I may have missed this, so I want to make sure that I'm right. 280679S is different than what we looked at yesterday. Yes or no? Am I confused?
I hope it's not.
Is it the same LC number as yesterday, or any
Yeah, it
changes
is.
overnight?
It is the same LC number that we had yesterday. Molly
Thank
has
you.
confirmed that.
Just from yesterday, we did confirm, or you agreed with me, that the two Georgia Supreme Court cases that have reviewed these removals in Glenn County and the City of Decatur, Supreme Court has approved the process that the city and county went through.
Correct.
We agree about that.
We do.
And your bill adds some additional government steps that.
What this would do now that the court has ruled, if DeKalb County, if they want to do away with that monument, they can offer it to a group. Preferably somebody that may want to put it back in DeKalb County, but if not, then it could be moved to another county.
Thank you.
And of course, the power that the local governments have, they can make those decisions based on what's in the best interest of their county, whether it's the moving cost or the location cost or the location selection.
Thank you.
Okay, final question, Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a tendency to say a lot of times that these are simple things, and then we always have those unintended consequences. So who is paying all these expenses? Is expense at the county and the city, on the county and city level?
The expenses of moving it would bear to the city or the county, but they're taking them down now. And if they're going to take them down, then just move them to wherever they need to be moved to.
But
And I dare say that the expense of moving one with an agreement has got to be cheaper than the cost of litigation.
have you talked to any cities or counties about this?
ACCG talked to me. Their only concern was that cost of taking it down, but I would submit to you, if they're going to take that statue down anyway and put it into storage, there was the cost of taking it down. Just go ahead and transport it to the location it's given to. The second question that ACCG had was, how are they going to pick which one? Well, at some point, local officials are elected just like we are. They have to make a decision. If you got two different groups that want that monument, pick out the most applicable, the one that would deal with it the way it should be dealt.
Okay, just to make sure I understand. So I have a monument in my city, and I'm the mayor, and it's sitting there. So if I decide I don't want that monument in front of City Hall anymore, then I'm going to advertise it, see if somebody wants it. If they don't, I can take it down and put it in storage and not worry about it unless somebody comes and sues me.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated. That mayor would have to have the approval of the city council. And if they took that monument down, it would have to be placed in storage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Gaines.
I'd just like to make a motion we do pass, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the passage of the bill, say aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, we're going to do a raise your hand vote. All in favor of passage of the bill, please raise your right hand. 7. John Bowles. Okay, we have 7. All opposed, raise your hand. 2. Okay, the vote is 7-7. The chair casts a vote in the yay manner, so the bill passes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, next we're going to move on to one of the bills that we haven't had a hearing on before. Chairman LaHood, you want to present from where you are? Okay, mash your button there for me, please. All right, Chairman LaHood, go ahead and proceed as you're ready.
All right, thank you, Chairman Anderson, appreciate it. And this is a bill, I would describe it as a cleanup bill.
Chairman, please, I didn't read the bill number. Please give us the bill number and the LC number, if you don't mind, please.
The bill number is, I believe, 521.
513.
Is it 513?
Unless you want to present my bill.
No.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, 513, excuse me. And the LC number is 473380. And this is a bill that's kind of a cleanup to a bill we started last year related to service delivery strategy that all 159 counties do every 10 years to come to agreement with the municipalities within the counties. And after the bill doesn't, the effective date in last year's bill is 2026, so it has not become effective yet. And the stakeholders involved, essentially the two associations, ACCG and GMA, have identified some improvements to avoid additional conflict, to make this a smoother process, and to reduce the risk of lengthy and expensive conflict that ultimately cost taxpayers. And so the changes are on, the meat of the changes are on line 56 and below, and it just requires that counties report sources and amounts of revenue generated from certain services. And so everybody agrees. There's no known opposition to this, and I would just ask for favorable consideration at the proper time.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we do have 2 people. I have no lights blinking for questions for the sponsor, but we do have 2 people signed up. Again, ACCG and GMA both signed up in favor. Would either of you wish to speak or just wave? We
fully support the bill.
Okay, they fully support the bill, so both have acknowledged that. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to pass. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the part of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and take up. I'm going to take a little bit of chairman privilege, and I'll present my bill. This is a bill that has been heard in subcommittee. It's House Bill 521. There is a substitute, and we made a minor change at the request of our redistricting and reapportionment office. This is LC 473477S. This bill relates to a very narrow and specific situation of de-annexation. It's a de-annexation to where a county owns all parcels proposed to be de-annexed, and they have petitioned for that de-annexation. This is something that's it's allowed through some de-annexation code already that was passed a few years back. The one thing we did not do is put a time limit on when the municipal corporation or the is to make a determination on the de-annexation. So what this bill does is puts a 90-day time limit on that, does allow provisions to reject based on health, safety, and welfare of the residents and property owners. And what the sub does is it also requires the appropriate shape files be provided to the redistricting and reapportionment office with the state legislature. Well, I'm getting a nod from Gina, so this was a very friendly change that we made. Any questions regarding this bill? Okay. Representative Adesanya.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Shouldn't cities have the final say on their own boundaries?
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
I was wondering, so shouldn't cities have the final say on their own boundaries?
It's a mutual process, okay, the cities and the counties. And this is property that in most cases the city should not object to. They are not collecting any property taxes. They're, limited services. If those things are involved, it gets a little more detailed than this. This is purely property owned by the counties that they wish for. And typically the primary reason they would do this is to be able to utilize only their permitting process rather than having to go through a duplicate permitting process when they do construction and that sort of thing. So,
thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Yes, Representative Fleming.
Just at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's the proper time.
Move we do pass.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you all. Now, we're going to take up, sorry, let me get to my list here. All right, at this time, I don't see Representative Momtahan here at the moment, so let's look at House Bill 397. Representative Fleming, just mash your button there so I got you. Okay, go ahead and proceed from your seat, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 397, this is a sub from committee sub from our subcommittee hearing last week. And working with the chairman, we've heard several elections bills, and we have incorporated into my original Bill 397 several of the other elections bills that were unanimously passed out of subcommittee. So I will start on Section 1, page 2 deals with state elections boards members and how the appointees are elected from the General Assembly. As we all know, the House and the Senate have appointees on state elections board, and when we are in session, the elections board obviously can approve to appoint members and also to remove members. When we are not in session, the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House have the authority to appoint members to those boards. What the code is silent on is if they're removing of a member, and what this does is just mirrors that to where they're able to remove members as well. Section 2 was part of the original part of HB 397, and it is dealing with Saturday voting for municipalities. As we know, there are two mandated Saturday voting days for federal, state, county, and municipal elections. What this does is, after subcommittee hearing and accepting a friendly amendment from Representative Elaye, what this does is it still has two Saturday votings for municipalities, but it does allow a municipality to opt out of the Saturday voting if they so see fit. Section 3 was another elections bill regarding special election dates. This allows for local special elections for referendum or questions as long as there is a statewide election already occurring or a special statewide election already occurring. And then you move on to Section 4, and it is removing in code, there is on odd number years, there is a special election date on the third Tuesday in September. It is very rarely used, and the thinking behind that, in odd number of years, you have a November general election anyways. If we'd had a special election in September this past September, it would have been 49 days out from the November election. And during that process, counties typically start preparing for the election 75 days out. So it creates confusion to the voters, but it also puts local election superintendents in tough positions sometimes, and cost a lot of resources to do that. So it would strike that third Tuesday in September special election date on the odd number of years. Mr. Chairman, that is the changes to the bill that I brought to you, and I forgot to read the LC number, LC 473466S.
Okay, thank you, and we do have some questions for the author. Before we proceed to that, I will make a comment. As you see, this is a substitute. It is a compilation of 3 different bills. The author's bill originally, also a good bill that was brought to the committee by Representative Sarah Draper, and a good bill that was brought to the committee by Representative Trey Kelly. So this is an opportunity for the committee to kind of combine some things together, and we felt that these were very good principles to include. I'd like to recognize Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What happens if a city just decides they're just going to opt out? That would be taking away those members in their city their right to vote on Saturdays.
So I would disagree with that. There are ample times to vote. 3 weeks of early voting, election day, absentee. What this is, Representative, or for like my district, I represent some very small municipalities that some of them might have nobody vote on Saturdays, and some might have just a few. And it gets down to a management of it. It gets down to a cost of it to run those Saturday votings. And obviously it's county by county, or municipality by municipality would make that decision. Obviously the city of Atlanta, they would use the 2 Saturday votings, they would need it. But you look at the city of New Bern in my district, that is just a population of a few hundred people. They might not need that, and they might choose to say, hey, we're going to have 1 Saturday voting instead of 2 and not eliminate it completely. And just because they do it 1 cycle, it doesn't mean it ties their hands forever. They can do it cycle by cycle. So they might decide to say, we're not going to have Saturday voting this time, but we will, the next cycle they decide to do it. So
is that in the bill? Does it say that they can make that decision based on, for example, if it's a governor's election or presidential?
Well, this is just for municipal elections.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, not state and county or federal.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Adesanya.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Fleming. And I know we talked about this in the subcommittee. So that allows cities to opt in to that option.
To opt out of, that's correct.
I mean, to opt out of that option.
Yes.
My concern is if you notice, and I know it's an opt-out option, it's not restricting all of the cities, but if you've taken a look over the last municipal election we had in 2023, the second Saturday grew more. People voted more in the second Saturday, City of Atlanta, Savannah. So it's getting popular. And I know it's not restricting, it's an opt-out option. But I just worry any measure that deals with voter suppression. I think we should be expanding the access, if anything, encouraging that. Again, I know it's not restricting, but the notion that we even have that in place, that worries me. I think we should increase access to voting as much as we can and not limit Saturdays or any day. So I don't know if I'd be supporting this measure.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Representative Williams.
My question is, did election directors ask for this this piece of legislation?
Yeah, so this is actually, like I said, from my district, I have a very rural district. This has come from elections directors. It's come from municipalities that are, have very small populations and don't have the turnout on Saturday votings. Like I said, I represent 11 municipalities. Most of them are very small municipalities, like majority of them in the state. So yeah, it's come up from the ground up. Yes.
Further question, Mr. Chairman? So, couldn't this also be used as couldn't this be used, say, by a larger municipality with leadership that wanted to suppress voting by getting rid of one Saturday? I mean, it could be used by a municipality of any size.
Yes, every municipality would be able to use this.
And I just want to say, I've been on Governmental Affairs since I was first elected in 2018, and it seems to me this is not. We've just passed one thing after another that takes little bites out of. I mean, just we're chipping away, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, at accessible voting, and I just hate anything that takes us in that direction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How are you?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I was absent at the subcommittee meeting, so I apologize. But I did think of one thing that I think could be confusing. So I think it's my understanding that during the municipal elections this year, we're going to have the PSC elections. So if we have a city who's using the county to administer their elections, we have that a lot across the state, and the city opts not to have Saturday voting, but somebody goes to vote in the PSC race. To me, that is going to confuse voters significantly, that they have to come back and vote twice. And this wouldn't be the only instance that this may occur. So that concerns me, just about confusing any voters, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Then the other thing that kind of I bow up a little bit about, because I have been on this committee now for 5 years, and the one thing we keep hearing for reasons for election bills is uniformity. We want uniformity in these bills, but this bill is carving out something special because yours is smaller. My other problem is the city clerk is getting to make a decision for the entire city, and they're not elected. So I think I would rather see maybe the city council have a public hearing and decide if they were going to opt out of Saturday voting, to put that into the hands of the people. So those are my comments. I don't know if you would consider thinking about any of those, or maybe I would even handle one mandatory Saturday over no mandatory. Those are my compromise positions if we have to have one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And no, I did not think about the special election for the statewide PSC. That is something I'll work on when we get to the Senate on the effective date too, for this as well.
That's true on the effective date too, but I don't know how you fix the confusions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Bazemore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. And we did have lengthy conversation in the subcommittee, and it has come up again about confusion, because I know I asked a question then about if a city decides to opt out, can they opt back in? And that was confirmed. That to me causes confusion, because if you understand you are in, you're opting, you're not even opting in, you're in on those Saturdays, and then the next time you go to vote, you opt out, and then people are totally confused at what's going on. So that's my major concern, is confusing, just like my colleague said, confusing people about when they can vote and when they can't vote.
Okay, thank you. And Chairman LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for bringing the bill. I was just going to comment that I too live in a very rural county, and I've personally experienced or witnessed, Saturdays where you have multiple election workers on duty, and very, very few. I mean, maybe less than 10 people come in to vote who could easily vote any other day of the week that the polls are open. So I see it more as more local decision making, not voter suppression whatsoever. It's just in cases where we need just more efficiency and giving some of the smaller municipalities some relief and options. Because with what I think there's 537 cities, and there's just unique needs all around. So I do respect the uniformity comment, and do believe we need uniformity. We have good uniformity. This is just an instance where we can give some local decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree.
Thank you, and Representative Montahan.
Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd just like to make a motion.
Okay, we've got a few more lights, and then we'll get to that point. Chairman Blackman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm probably going backwards here, but the author of the bill, the 29 to 60 days. Can you explain that a little bit? I know that was probably in the original, and I just hadn't gotten an explanation on that.
Yeah, so that was working with Gavrio and local elections officials on these special elections when they're called. And what this is meant to do is to give the local elections officials more time to prepare for the special elections. When you have 29 days, lots of times that's a crunch to get some things, for them to get an election held. So this is giving them more time to do everything they need to do for these special elections. I know in some of the smaller counties that might not be as big of a deal, but in some of these larger counties where you have special elections called, they're seeing they need more time. Right now, for a general election, for a state general election or a state primary, it usually takes them 75 days to prepare for an election. So this was giving them some more time on these special elections when they're called.
Well, follow up, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I mean, do we cut off on the front end then, whoever is making that call for that election, the timing for them?
Well, I think there's an argument for that, and I've worked with ACCG. We talked through some of this. I think there's an argument for that, but I think there's also an argument that the counties, because it's dealing around SPLOST referendums and T-SPLOST, counties, should be prepared and know when their T-SPLOST and their SPLOST are coming up for renewal. So what this is going to make the counties have to do is to start thinking a little further ahead what they need to start doing and working with their municipalities and planning for this election. And one of the things I committed to ACCG, we put an implementation date on this for July 1, 2026, so they could work with the counties and educate them of the change that, hey, when you have your special elections, your questions and your SPLOST coming up, you're going to start preparing a little earlier for them.
Well, I appreciate the measure, and I'm certainly not opposed to it. I just, I know when we go at least, and we're talking about that, just are we handcuffing ourselves? Because, obviously that, that's gonna cut off one end versus the other. But I appreciate the answer, and I appreciate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Next, Representative Olalier.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative, I appreciate some of the changes you've made. At the end of the day, I'm sympathetic. I serve in larger cities, and so I can't speak to the concern that you're mentioning. I just think it's a value. This is a values-driven decision, right? I think even if it's one vote, even if it's that single mom who is working, Monday through Friday, and that's the only day she can vote, and now this would allow a city to opt out and prevent that mother from voting. And even if it's one vote, that's one less person who would have an opportunity to participate in the political process. And so it's worth investing in, maintaining options and increasing access to be able to vote more easily. And so I cannot support anything that makes it more difficult or removes options for families and individuals to vote. I understand the intent. I just think it's going to have a bunch of unintended consequences that a few folks have mentioned already. but I appreciate the work.
Okay, thank you. Representative Adesanya?
Thank you again, Chair. So as we talk this through, if a city election and a county election occurs on the ballot at the same time, can the county offer Saturday voting while the city does not?
Yes, it's my understanding that they could.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had an incident in our county where a commissioner resigned. I think it was in June or July. And so because we didn't have there was no special election in between that time, so that community went almost 5 months without a commissioner. And so I can see where that would be a problem if we're not allowed to have that special election. We also had an election, since you brought up about county and city, where the city was having an election and the people would have to go in one door to vote for the city. Then they'd have to go all the way around to the next door to vote for the county. Mm-hmm. And that was very confusing. Yep. I just suggest that, I understand, you're smaller, may not have as many people, but you do have people that work. So maybe what you could do is open up both Saturdays and maybe only go to noon, but at least people would have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no more lights blinking at this time. I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to pass.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? LaHood, second. Okay. All right. Any discussion? I have Representative Roberts.
I have a motion to amend at the appropriate time.
Okay, now would be the appropriate time.
Okay. Let's see. I have two options. I don't know if any of them are palatable, but I'll go with. I got to figure out which line it on because I didn't have the sub before this. The idea would be that they could opt out of the first Saturday of mandatory Saturday advance voting instead of all Saturday voting. I got to find the right line. Do you guys see that? Does anybody know what line I'm looking at for? I can't find it. I had a line on the old one.
Nope.
50, where?
57.
Oh, yeah. I guess. They wrote me different language here. Let's see. The period of advance voting in any municipal election shall include, okay, so instead of that, I could say, the election superintendent for any municipal election may opt out of the first Saturday of the mandatory Saturdays of advance voting by providing notice to the Secretary of State and the municipality's county election superintendent if different than the municipal election superintendent, and publishing such notice in the county legal organ at least 28 days in advance of the municipal election.
Okay, and that would go where?
I guess line 57, you, instead of the notwithstanding, it would, that.
So you're talking about replacing the
Correct.
added portion there with your verbiage, and you have that written out so that
I do.
Okay, all right, and that's in the form of a motion.
Well, I have another one. Yes.
Okay, we'll do it one at a time.
Yeah,
all
I was
right.
telling him, sorry.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have discussion on the amendment, the proposed amendment. Seeing none, all in favor of the proposed Roberts 1 amendment,
Perfect.
please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. No. Okay, let's do a hand vote. All in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand, please.
5, 6, 7.
Okay, all opposed, raise your right hand, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay. It is 8 against, 4, and 7 for, so the amendment fails.
Okay. Can I try number 2?
You may.
Okay, same area that we said on line 57, except we would change it to say, notwithstanding any provision of this paragraph to the contrary, a city council or other municipality governing body may opt out of conducting voting on one or more Saturdays during the period of advance voting in any municipal election by action taken during a duly called public meeting of city council or other municipal governing body. And to support this, just to give you a comment, the boards of election choose their voting days and times for the county, and those are at public meetings. And so it would seem like this would be an equitable way to handle eliminating Saturday voting. Thank you.
Okay, and again, that is in the form of a motion to replace the language starting on line 57 through line 60, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Do we have any discussion?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Can you restate that, and where would you insert that, or can you pass it? If you have, do you mind? Thank you. If we have a minute.
Keep it long enough to read it.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
Thank you for
We'll pause
considering
just a
it.
second to let the author to give
Thank
the
you.
sponsor a moment to read this proposed amendment.
It's the bottom one.
While we're doing that, I'll recognize Representative Williams.
So it's my understanding that this leaves the option of getting rid of Saturday voting. It just requires a public meeting over it.
That is what I believe I heard in the phraseology of what.
Okay, which
It puts it in the decision of the city council instead of just a clerk or an election superintendent making the decision.
yes, right. But the bottom line is, at least you have a public hearing, as you would with the Board of Elections. Thank you.
This is the first.
No, the bottom under, it's the second one.
All right.
I think it's fair.
And Representative Fleming, I left your mic hot in case you needed to ask questions of the amendment author. So, Representative Bernal, do you have a comment related to this while we're reviewing this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just think that in this day and age, I know it's in the Constitution about the legal organ, but I do think we also need to put it on our websites because most people do not even know what their legal organ is.
I appreciate that comment, and that's actually a subject I've heard discussed relating to the definition of legal organ in a more modern sense, but point noted. Representative Fleming?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, and I'm fine with that. Second amendment.
Okay, so any further discussion on the proposed amendment? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the Roberts 2 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, amendment carries. Now we're back to the original bill as amended. Any further comments on the bill? All right, seeing none, all in favor of, let's get that LC number right. LC 473466S as amended by the Roberts 2 amendment. Say aye.
Aye.
Let's try that again. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, bill carries. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, now we're going to move on to House Bill 324. And as Representative Martinez is coming to the front table, I want to take just a point of privilege for just a moment. Many times we have decisions that have to be made. Last year we had this bill virtually in essence introduced and carried through the system. This year it was dropped by two of our representatives, both Representative Martinez and again Representative Syra Draper. And Representative Martinez is presenting this bill for passage because his got to us first. The number on his is 324. Representative Draper's was 502. I appreciate the efforts on both parts. I know there was a little friendly competition there that improved the bill severely through the process, and so I do recognize that, and thank you both. And Representative Martinez, proceed.
Thank you.
Had your mic turned off. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Chairman and committee. This is House Bill 324, LC 47346-4S. And basically, Chairman and Committee, this is preferential treatment during advance voting and certain hours on Election Day for certain voters relating to primaries and elections, generally so as to provide for preferential treatment during advance voting and during certain hours on Election Day to voters who are blind, deaf, amputee, pregnant, accompanied by children of 2 years of age or younger, or accompanied by children with special needs regardless of age. Let me see. And also on Election Day, between the hours of 9:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., elector that is 75 or older, blind, deaf, amputee, pregnant, accompanied by one or more children of 2 years of age or younger, or accompanied by one or more children with special needs, regardless of the age of the child. And that's basically the bill, Chairman, and I'll take some questions.
Okay, Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this just designed just to put it in law? Because I know where I vote at, they're very considerate of those things, and they let those individuals come up regardless of age. So is that why we're doing this, just so it'll be in the code, or they can refer to it, back to it?
That is correct, Representative. We're doing it so it could be in the code. I do understand that most of the counties probably don't have this issue, but you just never know it. And yeah, that's the reason why we're doing it, just to put it in the code.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Chairman LaHood.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks for bringing the bill. And just a question: do you anticipate, some of the descriptions of the folks who would be able to go to the front of the line? People with special needs kids, for example. Would this just be up to the parent, to tell the election workers that my child has special needs, and they're just expected to kind of honor that, if it's not visibly obvious that the child has special needs?
Right.
Is that how you anticipate it working?
That is correct, Chairman.
Right.
That is correct, yes, sir.
And also sometimes you can't tell if a person's pregnant or not unless they just tell you. So just curious if that's how you anticipated it working.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Williams.
So my question is, how did you come up with this list of disabilities? Because some of these disabilities do not necessarily impact a voter's ability to stand in line. For instance, being deaf, and depending on where you are with pregnancy, I'm wondering how you came up with this list of disabilities.
Some by constituents, Representative. That's a good question. I've got some constituents in my district, basically, that meet these requirements. They are deaf and they're blind. So I decided to go that route. And like you said earlier, I quote you on a previous. We're not chipping away. And the beautiful thing about this bill, that we're not chipping away on the efforts to go vote. We're making it more easier to go vote from people that are disabled, deaf, and blind, to get the privilege that they duly deserve, Representative.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Burnell with a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you. Would you consider putting individuals who have Alzheimer's or cognitive issues? If you have to bring them with you, they can't stand very long. I'm just asking the question.
Beautiful question, because my mom has Alzheimer's. Absolutely.
And mine too.
And I would ask, the legal counsel if disability will fall under that category, or some disability, or maybe special needs or something like that. So if it's all right, I would add that, if it's right with the council, if disabilities falls under Alzheimer's or dementia. I don't know.
Okay, is that a question directed to
legislative council, if what Representative Burnell is asking about a person with Alzheimer's, is that correct, Representative? Does special needs or disability fall under that special counsel?
Arguably, it could have, but if we're going to add all of these other things, then that cuts down on the ability to interpret disabled more broadly. So adding it in might be necessary.
And you say it may be necessary?
If the goal is to keep all of these other issues listed as a way to skip to the front of the line, then you're cutting down on what can be interpreted as disabled without specifically spelling it out.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Montahan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, we got another light blinking here. Chairman Hitchens.
And I don't mean to be imprudent, but do we really want people with Alzheimer's voting?
That's correct.
I mean, if it's an obvious case of Alzheimer's, I don't know that they have the decision making and the mental capacity to make an accurate vote.
I wasn't asking for them to vote. I know that some caregivers cannot leave them by themselves.
Well, I think
that's what I meant.
Yeah, if they're there with a caregiver, I have no issue, but yeah. I just have grave concerns about Alzheimer's.
I was just asking about the caregivers. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the part of the committee? All right, no other questions. This bill has been presented in subcommittee. We had nobody sign up to speak to it. Is there what's the will of the committee? We have a motion. Second. We have a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the passage of House Bill 324, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. On to rules. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to recognize, save the best for last, Representative Montahan. We have two bills on the, if you'd like to, that'd be great, because you got a couple of things here. One of these is a first time we've heard it, so we will allow some very limited testimony if people want to. The first bill is one that we have heard in subcommittee and thoroughly discussed, and that is House Bill 215. So if you will proceed as you're ready, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I have before you House Bill 215. I know this went before the subcommittee on elections, so I'll try to be brief. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 215 effectively takes us out of the voter list maintenance organization called ERIC. At this point, approximately 9 states and more are coming to leave this organization. And as such, all the states around us, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, have left. Other states like Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Iowa, I believe Arkansas, Virginia, and West Virginia have left as well. And the system has become ineffective. And so, with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take some questions as we talked about in subcommittee. We have to address whether or not we want to take private and confidential voter data and send that to a third party. We also have to, make sure that the systems that we're using for voter list maintenance actually make sense for our citizens. Is it comprehensive? Is it detailed enough to be effective? And I would say that ERIC is not. Part of the amendment in the subcommittee was Representative Tim Fleming's amendment to put us in a state-to-state compact or a joint state compact, which I think is a great idea. And so that's the bill, and happy to take questions.
Okay, Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Considering that Georgia has a whole lot of issues with technology, I know that we had issues with unemployment, we've had issues with voting, and issues with the health care signing up. And why would we leave a system that is working and knowing that we have absolutely nothing to replace because we've done nothing to update our technology in the state? And just because as my mother would say, just because somebody else is doing it doesn't make it right.
Sure.
So that's not really a good argument for me. I just want to know, what do we have that is better to offer in technology? Because like I said, we have not invested any money. All those problems people have with their unemployment, getting their insurance, all of that, and their food stamps. So how's that going to make this any better?
Well,
other than the fact of a foreign actor, I don't want that to be the answer.
Well, I'm sorry. What was the last part of that? I'm sorry.
I just want to know what is if Georgia pulls out of ERIC, what else? What are they going to offer?
Well, I missed that. It was a foreign act. Is that what you said at the end?
No, I just said I didn't want that to be the answer.
Foreign act?
Actors.
Foreign
Because we
actors.
keep using foreign actors for excuses as to why we have to make changes.
Well, okay. I mean, I'll address that right up front. I'll say that foreign actors is probably a priority for this General Assembly, and I think for the United States, as we've seen. FBI Director Christopher Wray has time and time again, and even the new FBI Director, I'm sure will come to the same conclusion that China and our foreign adversaries are the number one threat to the United States and our economic power worldwide. So I would contend that that is not true, Representative. Secondly, we already do this with other states. Alabama is the one-to-one, to my knowledge. And in these other states, we are getting data, but we're having to get them from them one by one. So we have systems and abilities to do this already, and I would just contend that we would expand that. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is that ERIC is funded by member dues from its member states. And I've heard that people think it's partisan, but I'm trying to understand if I have a two-part question. If it's member dues and you've got Republicans and Democrat states that are paying for this service, and my understanding is their encryption methods are better than these state-to-state deals, what guarantees do we have that our privacy is going to be protected? Because the states who have shared have had lawsuits for those issues, and so I would rather stick with the system that right now I know is encrypted and is working versus what I'm reading is happening in other states where they're just teaming up with other states.
So is the question about security, Representative?
Yes.
Okay. I would say that under our current system, I think that almost any, and I have no way of comparing ERIC's to the other. As far as I know, we have not had any lawsuits here in the state of Georgia, but I would contend with you that sharing data with a third party is always an operational risk to our state. And you may not see it that way. We may disagree, but when it's not state controlled, we have no authority over them. We have no ability to have insight.
But isn't Alabama a third party if we're sharing between states?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about ERIC. I'm sorry, the third party. Yeah, they're a state government, right? So they're not a third party. They're governed by their own state laws. They're part of the 50 United States.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, thank you for bringing the bill. I think it's a great bill. Obviously, I'm a co-signer on there with you. But can you restate, you said of our 5 bordering states, how many of those 5 bordering states are part of ERIC?
Yeah, that's right. And to your point, 75% of the folks who are moving in and out of the state come from our bordering states. And so far, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina have all left. The only state that's left is South Carolina. I understand there is some movement there to also withdraw.
That's right. And if they were to withdraw, we'd be the only state in the Southeast left in it.
That's right. And that would be a catastrophe, in my opinion. And it makes no sense to
Absolutely.
me in this system.
Thank you for the bill.
Thank
Great
you.
bill.
Okay, Representative Williams.
Representative Montahan, so you say you have concerns about sharing data with third parties. Since our President Trump has allowed Elon Musk to share our personal data from the U.S. Treasury with Elon Musk, how is that, which to me seems a much greater data breach than anything Eric could ever do, how can you justify this, this proposal?
Well, Representative, first of all, I'll say this, you know, I'm a state elected representative. I represent the great people of House District 17 in Paulding County, Georgia. I know where the hills are and the creeks are. I can't really answer for, you know, the federal government. I will tell you that from what I've heard, if you just want to talk in anecdotes and rumors, that it was then President Obama that actually authorized the department that DOJ is using to look into an audit of the federal government. So, you know, if I think that members on this committee who are on the left, and you got members on this committee who are on the right, you know, it was President Obama who created the authorization of the Congress to authorize what is considered DOJ today. That's my understanding. Of course, I'm not a congressman, but you know, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. At least that's what they say in Paulding County.
Okay, thank you. Representative Burnell, and then we'll have Vice Chair Gaines, and we'll be closing out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again. Do you think, is it not true that the state of Georgia may be the reason why our system, or why Eric has problems keeping up, because we're always pulling people in and out of our roles, voting roles, and maybe they just can't keep up because, of course, we have a faulty system. And do you think maybe that might be one of the problems? It's not Eric, it's really the state of Georgia.
Representative, I'm going to try to follow the question. Can you restate that? Just in, tell me what you're saying there.
Okay, well, I'm a retired educator, so I'll make it so that you can understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
8th grade level.
8th grade. I taught 5th, so I can go to 5th if you want me to.
Even better.
Okay. So the state of Georgia consistently pulls voters off of their rolls. And so you're saying that Eric is not capable of keeping up. Well, would it not be that Eric might not be able to keep up because Georgia's system is always doing something? It's hard to keep up with somebody keep up with a system and the system keeps making changes on its own, pulling people off the voter rolls. So,
well, thank you, Representative Brown.
You understand now?
I think I do. I think I
Okay.
do. What I would say is this.
Okay.
You know, what I would contend for this committee,
Okay.
and why we're, you know, removing ourselves from this system, or I'd hope that these great representatives here would do that.
I'm sure you'll get the votes, but anyway.
I sure hope I do. I sure hope I do. But if we do, it's because other states' actions, not the actions of Georgia. When you look at Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Iowa, Arkansas, West Virginia, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, I think it's Florida. Yeah, Florida. And they start leaving, finding a different option. But thank you.
Okay, and Vice Chairman Gaines.
I'd like to move to pass.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of passage of the bill, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, we're going to do a hand vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. 8. 1, 2, 3. 7. Okay, 7. And all opposed, raise your right hand. 6. Okay, motion carries. Bill passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And please keep your seat because we're going to now start on, go to House Bill 374. I didn't put my glasses on. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so in front of me, I have LC 443119S. And if everybody's ready, I'll continue from there, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 374 is a measure aimed at increasing transparency and security in Georgia's housing market by requiring the disclosure of foreign adversary ownership of residential rental properties. We have growing concerns about foreign entities acquiring American real estate. $13.6 billion came in 2023, and that number continues to grow, and that's from China alone, Mr. Chairman. It is astounding, I should say. This bill ensures that local governments and communities have the necessary information to protect their housing markets from those potential external influences and economic manipulation. So there's some key provisions in this bill for the committee. Number one, property owners or managers must disclose if a residential rental property is partially or wholly owned directly or indirectly by a foreign adversary. Foreign adversaries are those designated by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce under Federal Regulations 15 CFR Section 7.4. This disclosure must be made publicly available, ensuring transparency for local governments and residents alike. Local governing bodies may establish housing management databases to understand the ownership of these rental properties. However, this is only for property owners with, and we're going to have an amendment here in just a moment, a friendly amendment, Mr. Chairman, of 10 or more contiguous dwellings within a jurisdiction that must register these properties. As you know, a lot of these investments have been coming in some of these kind of build-to-rent neighborhoods, and that's where you see a lot of hedge fund money coming into our state and into our housing markets. There is some information that will be coming, but I will go ahead and spoil it. In my House district alone, 83% of the single-family residential market is owned by 21 major hedge funds. 83%. Let that sink in. That is an astonishing number that we all have to come to terms with. Registrants must update that ownership within 30 days, and this does not include any short-term rentals. It also does not include any apartments. Those are out of the bill. Failure to disclose foreign adversary ownership will result in penalties consistent with those who fail to register for the rental properties. Those fines range from $500 to $1,000. This does provide for some hardship, and that is to protect individual property owners facing legitimate challenges, active duty military personnel, individuals with severe medical conditions, and those impacted by natural disasters. In closing, Mr. Chairman, this bill is a proactive step to safeguard Georgia's housing market from foreign adversaries who may seek to manipulate real estate pricing, limit housing availability, or exert undue influence on local economies. By making foreign ownership transparent, local governments and communities can better assess the impact of external investment on housing availability and affordable. And this legislation ensures that property ownership information remains accessible while balancing those regulatory requirements to avoid overburdening small landlords. Mr. Chairman, that is a summation of this bill. I would ask for yours and this committee's favorable consideration.
Okay, we have a question, or yes, first of all, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I missing where it exempts? I saw the definition of short-term. I have a couple of questions. I hope you'll indulge me. But I didn't see an exemption for apartments or short-term. Is that the amendment that's coming?
We are waiting a friendly amendment, yes.
Okay. And then I'm trying to think about how this contiguous would work. I know what the word contiguous means,
Sure.
but let's say
it's more than a fifth grade word.
Yeah, I got that one. But my point is, let's say an investor comes in and they buy 5 in a row, and then there's a gap of 2 for however many months. Like, how are you gonna? I guess when they hit 10, that's the thing. But they could still own a lot in a subdivision that's not contiguous.
That's true. I would say that in Paulding County, right? So that's where my heart is. That's where my district is. 83% of my single-family residential market is already this. Right.
Right. I heard that yesterday.
Right.
That's crazy.
And so I would say, is that a possibility? Could they do 9 houses and have the 10th one? Sure, I guess that is a possibility. I think that if we see those kinds of actions, I believe that this General Assembly would bring this measure back up and we'd readdress that. But I don't think, I understand how you'd contemplate that issue. It's not addressed in this bill, but it's a start.
And I applaud what we're all trying to, I think, come to. I'm also cognizant of property rights and constitutional rights and some of those things. So I just want to make sure that we're. One other. Did I see somewhere? I'm trying to find it again. This list has to be published publicly.
No, it does not. No, there's no public list in this.
Or was that in the first version then?
That was probably in the first version. That's correct.
It would be subject to ORA though. Open records. Sorry.
That I can get you an answer for after the committee. I'm not entirely sure. I believe it wouldn't be, but we can always. We're going to ask some folks. I'm sure who'll have testimony later. I'll let you ask that question to them.
Okay. I would think it would, because I don't think it falls under the exemptions of litigation.
And I know you're a learned attorney, so I'm sure
all right,
you would know.
Mr.
That.
Chairman, can I ask one more question? Sorry. Okay.
And I would
I had
say,
lots of them because I just, let's see. So.
And Representative Roberts, I would say that for sure the foreign disclosure is public. And so we made a point of making sure that those foreign disclosures are publicly accessible, and in the jurisdictions will have to post that information. So, because we saw that as a critical public piece of information.
That one makes me worry about the constitutionality of it, but I'll put that aside for just a minute. I also worry about the fact that it requires private phone numbers that would be I get requests from my local municipalities saying that they're getting these really expansive ORA requests for their staff with phone, information about their salaries, all this data, and it feels very targeted, and the employees are feeling somewhat threatened. So I'm sitting here thinking of if anyone can access a list of property, landlords basically, with personal phone numbers and email addresses. It's one thing to require the broker information, like the property manager. You can give a broker's office, and they're subject to the Georgia Real Estate Commission, but I get concerned when we're just openly providing such very specific private information to the public willy-nilly. So
and to answer that question, we do understand that, and in here you have the choice. It's not property owner and property manager information. It's or. So if you have a property manager, you can use that information in lieu of a property owner's information.
Okay. All right. Thank you for indulging me.
That's right. And I want to say this for the committee too. Understand that the scope was very limited, and I know that y'all are working without the amendments, but these are 10 or more contiguous properties. In effect, this is about build-to-rent hedge fund communities, right? You're not going to capture many, if any, I would say few, that have 10 or more contiguous.
Oh, you're not talking about going in and buying existing neighborhoods. You're trying to block an entire product out, the build-to-rent product, is what you're saying.
I wouldn't say block, but we don't block anything here, and I think there's so we're not banning.
Well, you just said build-to-rent, so I was reacting to what you said. I didn't know that there was a specific thing you were targeting.
Right.
I'm just asking.
Yeah,
for
no,
your district.
for sure. I think that's a great question, but especially the build-to-rent side of this is pretty egregious. And we've seen these hedge funds come in. I think we've heard testimony in the Judiciary Committee yesterday where they're not even renting the houses. They're just building them and letting them rot. And that's obviously an issue. But yeah, we kind of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, not all build-to-rent products are hedge fund investment absentee
Certainly
people,
not.
right?
And we're not banning those products. We're just simply asking, hey, we need a property manager, someone we can contact in 30 days.
Okay.
If there is a, destructive fire, if there is a safety concern or condition, this bill, for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, it does not change how somebody could enter a home or an inspector could look at a property. Those all are the very same way they've existed in law for 15 or 20 years. We don't change that. All we're saying is if you own 10 or more contiguous properties, which is going to be a high propensity of build-to-rent communities like those that are found in Paulding County and House District 17, you'll hear more testimony on that today. Then at that point, we just have to have a property manager's information, a phone number, and someone we can get in contact with. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I have no more lights on the board here at the moment, so we do have, this is the first time we've heard this bill, so we're going to have a couple of people come up and speak, and I will, again, the hour is growing late, so anyone who wishes to waive their opportunity, we will recognize you in the position that you've stated on the sign-up sheet. Kaylin Day with ACCG is 4. Do you wish to speak?
I'll ask Noah from GMA.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Noah Rainitz with the Georgia Municipal Association.
And I'm Caitlin Day with ACCG.
Yeah, we're here today speaking in full support of House Bill 374. This bill really, for the local governments, this is about a point of contact. We heard yesterday in the full Government Affairs Committee meeting about some of these corporate actors. They're not necessarily aloof in their responsibilities, but finding the correct point of contact is nearly impossible for your partners in local government. This bill requires the owners or managers of more than 10 congruent properties to provide either that property manager's contact information or the property owner's contact information. To address some concerns that were brought up earlier, absolutely, cities and counties are subject to open records requests. This list would not be held in a publicly facing capacity. A records request could be submitted. Local governments are traditionally known to be custodians of those records. They know how to handle those requests and handle them appropriately. With that being said, certain items are excluded from open records, and those include unlisted phone numbers, personal email addresses, other types of things. So there is the potential that some of that information would not be available should an open records request be put forth. But we fully support the bill. Happy to stand for any more questions. And we've discussed some amendments. Those are going to be brought. We also support those amendments as they're brought. We discussed those earlier today. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Betsy Bradfield.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the author for bringing this bill. My name is Betsy Bradfield. I am with the Georgia Association of Realtors. We have heard the substitute changes, and we do appreciate the author on making a lot of those changes in the language. However, we will always oppose a rental registry, full stop, especially one that does not protect the private property, the private information of the property owners. The entire reason that this provision originally exists in state law is because of the early 2000s case Brumberg versus the city of Marietta, where the city used their own rental registry to do inspections without warrants. And then they were using their rental registry to collect information in order to force certain citizens of a certain nationality out of neighborhoods that they didn't want them to live in. It is a particular concern to us when we have just had this conversation about not trusting outside parties with personal information. And in addition, there is no enforcement mechanism in the rental registry. Where there is an enforcement mechanism is in the bill that you just passed out of committee, House Bill 399. There is an enforcement mechanism there with GREC, the Real Estate Commission, and there is also a point of contact that addresses that issue and that language that we proposed, because the point of contact is the property manager that is listed with the Real Estate Commission and is publicly available. The license number is on the lease. You can go on the Real Estate Commission and type in the license number and find the property manager. Finally, there's nothing in this bill that prevents a local government from using this information to use it in a zoning decision, which is exactly what happened in Cherokee County, who did an overlay on renters versus property owners. And if they use this in the zoning decision, that's just redlining 2.0. So we ask you to vote no on House Bill 374. This does not do anything to actually address how these corporations are able to purchase property. It doesn't prevent them from purchasing property. It doesn't force them to sell off property. And it will not solve the problem that they want to address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tom Phan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Tom Phan. I'm a senior policy associate with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. We advocate for the civil rights and protections of Asian Americans and immigrants throughout Georgia. I'm here to speak out against this bill because of the public registry that would require people from foreign adversarial countries designated as foreign adversaries to the United States to be made public. It's especially concerning if their personal information, phone numbers, addresses are made public and then, possibly exposing them to harassment, other acts of xenophobia. And I will say I just learned that 7 of the big corporations owning land, owning single-family property in 21 counties of Atlanta. Well, there are 51,000 of which, and of the ones that own them, 7 big corporations, all of them are domestic other than one headquartered in Toronto, Canada. So due to the constitutionality concerns that we have, we ask that you not pass this bill. Thank you.
All right, sir, if you could hold on one second, we do have one question. Representative Montahan, author of the bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, to the gentleman's point, I see you're talking about foreign adversary disclosures. You know, I think my question would be, I'm half Persian, but I would not register as a foreign adversary. And I don't think someone who's of Chinese nationality, Iranian nationality, North Korean nationality, they would not be subject to foreign adversary disclosure unless they're working on, I guess, part of the Chinese, Communist Party. So I'm trying to understand how that would be xenophobic if we're talking about countries and not ethnicities or race. And that's not part of the discussion.
The bill doesn't define what a foreign adversary is, other than naming what those countries are. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, if I will, it says any owner or property manager of residential rental property subject to housing management database requirements under subsection C of this code section shall disclose where the property is partially or wholly owned directly or indirectly by a foreign adversary as designated by the United States Secretary of Commerce pursuant to 15 CFR section 7.4.
Okay, so it's referenced in the code section.
Correct.
Okay. We still have concerns over...
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
We still have concerns over people being discriminated against based on where they're from. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next on our sign-up sheet, Taylor Shelton.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Just to reintroduce myself, for those of you who don't remember me from yesterday, I'm Dr. Taylor Shelton. I'm an associate professor of geography at Georgia State University, but I would like to remind everybody I'm here in my personal capacity and not speaking on behalf of the university. So I haven't seen the substitute bill, so I can't speak to necessarily all of the specifics, but I would like to make a handful of comments that speak to both the overall utility of the original proposal and then some of the details that have been mentioned. I would also respectfully like to correct Representative Momtahan on the statistic you mentioned earlier, which was based on data that I analyzed. So your district, it is not 83% of the entire residential market. It is 83% of the single-family rental market. It is these companies represent just 11.6% of the total housing units in your district, which is, I should state, extremely significant and still a very, very much a cause for concern. But given that that is just 11.6%, that makes this question of 10 contiguous properties very kind of questionable in terms of how many instances that would actually apply to. Again, as I believe one of the other representatives mentioned, having, for instance, five contiguous properties with one in between and 5 more, that still represents the very same market distorting dynamic that we're concerned about as housing researchers, and I'm sure that you all are as policymakers. So I think that 10 contiguous properties element is something of a question and would lead me to question the utility of this bill as currently proposed. Similarly, exempting apartments raises some significant questions for me as a housing researcher because it is multifamily apartment buildings that are actually the most difficult to track down, either the ultimate ownership or management of those companies, even more so than single-family rental properties. Companies of which tend to be vertically integrated, where it is actually fairly professionalized and easy to track down the ultimate owner. One of the other things I wanted to say, and that I had originally prepared in my remarks, and this I think goes across the board for the consideration of housing management databases as proposed originally in this bill, is that The research that you've gotten from me in the last 24 hours and the research you heard Dr. Raymond and Dr. Ahn present yesterday, we are able, thanks to the immense amount of training and specialization that we have developed as researchers in this field, to be able to do the kind of work that I presented to you all. It should not, however, require a PhD to know who your landlord is. And that is something that I think in particularly the amended version of this bill, we're ultimately not able to get at. And so therefore, I'm not sure how useful this actually is ultimately. Not having to disclose the actual owner name of or even parent corporation, I think, leaves a question again as to the utility, whether, for instance, listing ARLP REO 400 LLC or P5 2021-2 borrower LLC, is that sufficient to understand who actually owns your property and be able to hold them accountable or anything of that? If that is all the information that's required, it's unclear how this is an improvement over existing data that's available from local tax assessors' offices. So either disclosing parent companies or providing a list of aliases that companies do business under would be a substantial improvement in that respect, as would making this information publicly available, allowing for the inclusion and collection of other pieces of data such as rents charged, even if those rents aren't being regulated, and then ultimately allowing for some more clear enforcement mechanism. All of those are improvements that I think would make this bill actually useful in the intended purpose as I understand it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of lights flashing. I'm going to recognize Chairman Powell.
I just the last speaker. I just want to know, are you for it or are you against it?
Isn't so simple as that, I don't think. I would say that the original version is much stronger, and I would lean towards supporting it in its current form. I wouldn't say I'm either for or against.
You got a bright future in politics.
Okay, Representative
I don't
Monahan.
believe I do.
Okay. All right, last speaker we have signed up, Lucy Ruiz.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lucy Ruiz, and I serve as Policy Counsel for Georgia Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. I oversee our Housing Justice Initiative. Georgia Appleseed is a nonprofit law center that advocates for Georgia's most vulnerable children, keeping them in school with the supports they need, in stable, healthy homes, and out of the criminal justice system. We're here today because we support a housing management database. When a housing management database is written to be effective, it ensures transparency because it empowers local officials with a tool to better identify problematic landlords and property managers, particularly out-of-state large corporate and private investors who often use shell companies, LLCs, to evade accountability. It also ensures that local governments are better equipped to enforce housing safety and health regulations that ensure safer, more stable housing for Georgia's families. And it also ensures equality. It creates a fairer system for responsible landlords who support their communities. However, the current bill as written, we would want to see a stronger bill so that it could accomplish all of those goals. For example, because this bill excludes apartments, it would not protect the 13,000 plus school-aged children who live in chronically dangerous apartment complexes in Metro Atlanta alone. We lead a housing coalition called the Georgia Healthy Housing Coalition. That is a statewide coalition made of 80 plus organizations across this state. Our advocacy goals are informed by the families that we speak to and the local officials that are also part of our coalition. We have spoken to many code enforcement officers who have voiced the inability to get a hold of these out-of-state landlords because all they have is information about ABC LLC when there's an emergency on the property. They are not able to protect community members who are in immediate need. We also have concerns about issues such as the foreign adversary provisions. We worry that because of the way it is currently written, it will stigmatize children of families who come from those listed countries. For those reasons, we're here to voice our support of a housing management database, and we applaud the effort to bring a rental registry bill. However, we do not support the way that it is currently written as it is today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that's all we had signed up to speak. If you'll give us I'm going to suspend for about 3 minutes while we have some discussion about the way we want to proceed. Hold on. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion on the part of the committee.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to do pass.
Okay, we have a motion to do pass. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, now we're in discussion. Recognize Representative Vice Chairman Gaines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 amendments I would like to propose. On line 75, changing 5 to 10. And that's to, I believe, a friendly amendment, Representative Montdan. And then on line 122, after at the end of section 3, adding a line saying this code section shall not apply to short-term rental property. And that definition's already in the beginning of the bill. And so that would exclude that per the, again, I believe, a friendly amendment to Representative Montdan.
Okay. And that's in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion? Second. All right. And any discussion on the amendment? Representative Roberts, is your discussion on the amendment?
Did we say it did apply to apartments or it doesn't? I thought that was coming in on the amendment as well, or am I wrong?
I don't think, Representative Montdan, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's 5 or 10 contiguous dwelling units.
And thank you, Chairman. I'll say that that was thought of, and that was my mistake. I'm working on multiple different of these substitutes. So this is line 45, 44 and 45. It says and 31.7, 31-7-12.4 or multifamily properties consisting of more than 20 units.
So apartments do.
Yeah, well, they're about to make I think we're about to have another amendment on that.
Oh, so sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, so now, any further discussion on the Gaines amendment? And I will recognize Legislative Counsel.
If I could have the second part restated, because I'm confused on what's being exempt. You know, the short-term rentals are being exempted from the whole code section, or just the requirements of subsection C.
I think the goal would be, and if that's not the right place, to exempt them from the entire legislation. Is that the right place, or should we put
I mean, the placement was fine. It's whether it would be a new subsection or a new paragraph of subsection E.
Got it.
Okay, do we have clarity on that, Stuart?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. So any further discussion on the Gaines amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the amendment passes. Now we are still in discussion. Do we have another amendment? Okay. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I propose an amendment.
Are you on? Okay. You at 23?
Yeah, try another one. Try 24.
Try.
Is that better?
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I propose to follow amendment on line 45, striking the word structures and replacing it with the word properties. This is a friendly amendment worked with the author of the bill on.
Okay. We have a motion for an amendment. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. Any discussion on the amendment? Turn that off. Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the Fleming amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The amendment is applied. Now we are back to the original bill with the two amendments, the Gaines and the Fleming amendments. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the bill as amended, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, should we take a hand vote? All in favor, raise your right hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, all opposed, raise your right hand.
1, 2,
3,
4, 5, 6.
Okay. The vote is 6-6. To get this onto rules for consideration, I will vote in the affirmative. So, all right, motion passes, and we are adjourned. Thank you.